On a parallel Earth, humanity begins to construct robots with advanced artificial intelligence. Referred to as simulants or just Sims. They rapidly become a part of daily life, so individuals volunteer to have their faces scanned and replicated on robots to make them more human-like. Sims will soon be more than simply employees, they will be companions, athletes, and even police enforcement. In 2055, a nuclear weapon detonates in Los Angeles as a result of a government-created simulation, incinerating almost 1 million people. The Western world agrees to outlaw the use of artificial intelligence, but New Asia continues to support and even protects Sims as equal citizens. The United States embarks on a campaign to exterminate all Sims and is continually attacking New Asia to accomplish this goal. The Nomad, a gigantic orbiting station designed to scan the Earth for evidence of Sims and promptly eliminate them, is their most powerful weapon. The Army's main goal is to find someone named Nirmata, the leader and scientist behind the AI advancements. A group of American soldiers appears on the coast of New Asia 10 years later, while Nomad monitors the area from the skies. Joshua lives nearby with his pregnant wife Maya, who has a unique tattoo. When they hear a noise, Joshua dons his robotic arms and goes to explore and find their Sim companions. They are a bunch of guards led by Haroon, and they have brought an American soldier named Drew after discovering him slipping into the region. A Sim beats Drew up to force him to talk, but Drew remains silent as the Nomad approaches. Haroon's squad races to prepare the boats while Maya packs as the group decides it's time to depart and find a new refuge. When Joshua is alone, he scolds Drew for not giving him more time. He turns out to be an American soldier on an undercover mission who has also married Maya since she is Nirmata's daughter. As the Sim soldiers meet the American ones and a gunfight breaks out outside, Joshua takes Drew's radio and requests that the raid be called off because Nirmata isn't with them. This is overheard by Maya, who is furious that Joshua did not quit the army as promised and points her rifle at him, only to be cut off by the troops who removed Joshua out of the house. Maya flees and joins the Sims on the boats, but Nomad unleashes a missile that kills them all. 5 years later, Joshua is back in the United States, attempting to reintegrate into civilian life. He takes a lot of medication for his PTSD and sees a therapist on a daily basis, who employs a lie detector to make sure he's not hiding information. He works as part of the cleaning staff at Ground Zero, and one afternoon, he and his co-worker discover a robot that comes to life. It shakes all of its limbs as it pleads for mercy, causing the co-worker to fear because it sounds so real, but Joshua quickly shuts it down and assures his co-worker that they're simply machines with no feelings. All robots discovered are taken to be destroyed. Later, at home, Joshua watches films of Maya and remembers the moment she personalized his robotic limbs. He revealed that he lost them when the nuclear went off in Los Angeles, and that day he also lost his whole family. After that, he goes swimming, only to be accosted by General Andrews and Colonel Howell, who urge him to assist them with a mission. They've discovered that Nirmata is working on a superweapon capable of destroying Nomad, and that without that ship, the United States of America would lose the battle. Joshua is the only one who understands how the lab is laid out, thus he should lead a team to destroy the superweapon. Joshua first refuses, stating that they would not be in this situation if they hadn't blown up his mission and murdered his wife. When Howell shows him a holographic film proving that Maya is still alive and working with the superweapon, he instantly changes his mind. Joshua joins Howell's squad and they fly to New Asia in the middle of the night. After Nomad scans the area, the team lands on a field and Joshua leads them to the lab, only to find that they've built a village on top of it. The soldiers decide to invade and begin questioning the residents while holding them at gunpoint on their knees. McBride threatens to shoot a young girl's puppy, forcing her to weep and shake her arm. Joshua notices she's pointing to an altar, and by twisting a totem, the entrance to the lab appears. McBride and Bradbury remain outside as guards while the rest of the crew enters the lab and searches down a long corridor for the technicians, killing them all. Joshua checks the security cameras and notices that Maya should be nearby as well. The crew continues to shoot additional scientists, but this time the employees shut the bulletproof doors. Joshua explains that the locks can only be opened with facial recognition, so one of the troops grabs a knife and impersonates a deceased technician's face. Meanwhile, Bradbury sees the cops approaching and fires a couple missiles before pretending to surrender. The cops attempt to capture her, but Bradbury's rockets land and quickly murder all the Sims. Unfortunately, more cops come and open fire on her, forcing her to seek shelter. The crew makes it further into the lab and discovers a vault that must be hacked in order to be accessed. Shipley and Joshua stay to work on it while the others rush to fight the approaching guards, however, they quickly lose men, and Shipley runs to assist them. When the computer eventually finishes breaching the lock, Joshua enters the vault and finds a couch with a child watching TV. Joshua is taken aback when he discovers the child is a Sim, which has never been done before. A scientist emerges behind him and shoots him before opening an emergency exit for the child and instructing her to find Nirmata. The child emerges from the lab and witnesses the outer world for the first time, but she also witnesses a lot of fighting in the field. Joshua follows her out and unsuccessfully searches for Maya amid the fleeing scientists. The rest of the team returns to the plane, stating that they lost the combat and must leave before Nomad fires. However, Howl needs to double-check something before leaving. Bradbury tries to catch up and runs as fast as she can, but something knocks her on the back. She manages to board the plane before it takes off, only to learn that there is a bomb strapped to her body, which explodes in the midst of the air. The plane crashes nearby, just as Nomad blasts the area, knocking Joshua out. Joshua wakes up on a boat the next morning and discovers the robot girl staring at him. He tosses a rock at her to get her to go, but she only throws it back at him. Then Joshua investigates the area and comes upon an injured Shipley, so he scoops him up and drives him to an abandoned house to avoid the cops who are scouring the area. They hear a commotion and realize the child has followed them and is now watching TV. Joshua switches it off, but the child turns it back on with a simple hand gesture, causing Joshua to understand she is the superweapon. At that moment, Joshua's communicator rings with a call from Howl, drawing the attention of a neighboring farmer Sim. When Joshua tells Howl about the child, the colonel orders him to murder her, but their talk is cut short when Howl is surrounded by cops. She is detained right away and thrown in a van with McBride and Officer Bowie. When Joshua notices the girl is drawing Maya's tattoo, he hesitates to shoot a child and puts down his rifle. They are unexpectedly discovered by the farmer, who swears to protect Alfie. When Joshua's translator discloses the Sims' plans, he shoots first, killing the farmer while also informing the cops of their position. When Joshua asks Alfie where he may find Maya, the child replies that she is in Dien Dang. As the officers encircle the home and begin fire, Joshua takes Shipley and the girl into the farmer's pickup. When the officers fire a grenade at them, a dog grabs it and drags it outside, blowing up the cops and barking at the surviving parts. The girl then uses her power to activate the vehicle, allowing the gang to flee. Meanwhile, McBride and Howl collaborate to assassinate Bowie and take over the van, turning it around to seek for Joshua. Shipley subsequently points a gun at Joshua and requests a hospital, but Joshua explains that they are too far away from an American post and that he will take him to see a friend. Unfortunately, Shipley's injuries are too severe, and he perishes in the truck. When Joshua notices a car approaching, he covers the girl's robotic head with a hat. Because she doesn't have a name, he refers to her as Alfie because her ear says Alpha Omega. When the automobile comes to a halt, Joshua approaches the driver with his gun, demanding a ride to the city. McBride and Howl discover the abandoned automobile and Shipley's body moments later. Howl uses a device to temporarily transfer Shipley's consciousness into Bowie's sim body, but when he sees his own body, he panics and barely gets to claim Joshua was going in to see a buddy before dying again. The car is halted at a checkpoint in the evening because the authorities have received wanted posters for Joshua and Alfie. Joshua hides in the rear of the car, but a cop notices Alfie and requests that she remove her hat. Alfie uses her magic to produce a blackout in the neighborhood, then distracts everyone with some sparks on a sign and reactivates the car, successfully driving into the city and escaping the cops. Their escape is broadcast on the police frequency, so Howl and McBride are made aware of it. Meanwhile, a cop with the same donor face as Bowie discovers the dead by the road. Later in the city, Joshua attempts to ask Alfie where Dien Dang is, but Alfie refuses to respond. When the cops arrive, Joshua takes Alfie into the train to flee. Joshua notices other women who resemble Maya, but they're merely Sims with her donated face. Alfie asks numerous existential concerns on the trip, so Joshua explains that virtuous people go to heaven. He doesn't think he's up to it, and Alfie doesn't think she can go because she isn't a person. After falling asleep, Joshua recalls the day Drew assigned him the assignment to marry Maya in order to gather intelligence. He also gave him a wedding band with a hidden tracker. In the evening, the couple exits the train and notices their wanted posters plastered throughout city screens. While a bystander phones the cops, Joshua takes Alfie to a sim factory to see his friend, who turns out to be Drew. Drew changed his attitude after the incident, and he's now pro-AI to the point of dating a sim named Cammy. Joshua requests that Drew extract Maya's location from Alfie, but the child is highly encrypted. When Joshua asks if he can get Maya's ring instead, Drew informs him that she is no longer alive, but Joshua refuses to believe him. Drew then reveals Joshua the results of his inspection as Cammy distracts Alfie. Drew is capable of developing. Her skills are now restricted, but they will expand throughout time, and she will someday be able to operate all technology remotely. At that point, Alfie informs Cammy that someone is on their way to pick her up, but when Cammy checks, it's only the food delivery. After she shuts the door, the delivery man shows himself to be the other Bowie, who is joined by a swarm of officers before detonating a bomb inside the food box, killing Cammy. The officers then enter and attempt to apprehend Alfie, but Joshua enters and begins shooting them all down while Alfie peacefully watches TV. To overcome the remaining Sims, Joshua shoots Bowie in the face and uses a cop's own gun, but he can hear more police trucks approaching. He takes Alfie and a distraught Drew to flee just as the cops arrive, and while the Sims search the building, two cops show themselves to be Howl and McBride. Howl takes Cammy's head, intending to hack into her as well. Drew's computer eventually hunts down the ring and locates it in Joshua's old house. When they arrive, Joshua rushes into the house, only to discover the ring on the soaked floor. While he is watching the security footage of the incident, Alfie arrives to warn him that the military are on their way, but Joshua snaps and yells at her. When Alfie begins to cry, Joshua recognizes her as a person and hugs her while apologizing. Suddenly, Drew appears to warn them of the impending onslaught, but he is shot down. Before dying, he tells Joshua that Maya is Nirmata, which explains why they attacked 5 years ago. They couldn't tell Joshua because of his feelings for her. Joshua attempts to flee with Alfie, but they are quickly encircled by Sim soldiers headed by Haroon, and Joshua is knocked out. That night, Joshua recalls meeting Maya at a bar and hearing her story. His father had taught her everything she knew about AI, but he was forced to flee after the war began, so she was raised by the simulants, who loved her as much as a human would. Joshua awakens the next morning in a jail within a spacecraft. Haroon appears and tells him a couple more things. Maya's father was the original Nirmata, but after he died, she became the new one and created Alfie to stop Nomad. The Los Angeles nuclear bombing was caused by a human programming error, and they blamed the computer for the fault. If the Sims win the conflict, they have no plans to harm the Western world, they only want to live in peace. The army is manipulating Joshua's desire to see Maya to force him to lead them to her. Haroon is about to assassinate Joshua when he is interrupted by a disturbance outside. Nomad is blowing up their base. Joshua persuades Alfie to assist him in his escape, and he dives into the sea, prompting the soldiers to fire into the ocean. When they believe Joshua is dead, the boat departs, unknowing that Joshua is lurking beneath. When they get in the city, Joshua sneaks around and observes the Sim and humans coexisting peacefully. People even mourn the loss of fallen robots, and a Sim teacher teaches the children about peaceful cooperation. In the evening, Joshua waits for Haroon to fall asleep before pressing a button in his brain to activate him. Joshua attempts to flee with Alfie on a boat, but an alarm signals the coming of the Americans. Huge tanks start burning buildings and fire missiles, and Alfie leaves Joshua because she wants to aid her people. Death and ruin engulf the area, with both sides losing a large number of soldiers. Howl sends a simple robot across the bridge, and the robot explodes, killing even more soldiers. Then Howl sends a second walking bomb, but this one is halted by Alfie, who uses her talents to disable it. Unfortunately, McBride emerges and shoots Alfie, prompting Joshua to leap in and kill him. The bomb detonates again when Alfie is unconscious, so Joshua flees with the child before the bridge is demolished. While the others struggle, Haroon agrees to take Joshua to see Nirmata to repair Alfie. Not far away, Howl rebuilds Cammy in order to harm her for information, then kills her again. During the journey, Haroon explains that Maya created Alfie a few days before the attack and scanned her own embryo to create her, implying that Alfie is a replica of Joshua's deceased child. Eventually, Alfie is led inside a special temple by some monks, and Joshua inquires whether this is Dien Dang. The monk adds that the phrase means heaven, implying that Maya is no longer alive. When Joshua enters the temple, he finds a recovered Alfie next to Maya's body, which is attached to a machine. Another monk adds that Maya has been like this for 5 years, but she isn't truly alive, the machine simply keeps the body running. Because the Sims are not permitted to harm Nirmata, it is up to Joshua to eventually disconnect her. Joshua, who is crying, apologizes for everything and turns off the machine. At that point, the Americans arrive and begin slaughtering all of the Sims in the region. Howl enters the temple and begins transferring Maya's consciousness into a chip while holding Joshua at gunpoint. Haroon also appears and shoots Howl, prompting 2 other troops to shoot back. Howl approaches him to check on him, but it turns out she carries a bomb on her back, which Alfie detonates, killing her and both troops. Haroon then rises and orders Joshua to kill Nomad, so Joshua departs with Alfie and Maya's chip. Unfortunately, they are quickly discovered by the Americans, who separate them before transporting them away while Nomad blasts up the place. Later on in LA, Andrews orders Joshua to kill Alfie because they are unable to obtain any information from her. Joshua approaches Alfie and whispers something to her, setting her off. Andrews fears she's dead after seeing her vitals plummet on the screen. Joshua then takes Alfie to the incinerator, but on the way, Alfie confesses that she is alright. Joshua had only instructed her to go into standby mode. The girl uses her abilities to cause the vehicle to crash and block the road, giving Joshua enough time to pull her out and flee. The two sprint to the spaceport, where Alfie uses her powers to convince the boarding machine to let them through. Andrews sends commands to the pilot to make them fly back, but Alfie uses her talents once more and leads the plane toward Nomad. The guards enter the plane after all of the civilians have exited, but Joshua opens the door to create a vacuum, forcing all of the guards to be launched into the sky. Following Joshua's preparation of an explosive, Andrews responds by planning a huge attack on all of the Sim bases. When Joshua notices the missiles preparing to launch, he hands Maya's chip to Alfie and orders her to halt the attack while he installs the bomb. Alfie dashes through a few passageways until she reaches the correct area, where she utilizes her abilities to deflect all of the missiles just in time. While Joshua prepares the device to detonate in 10 minutes, Alfie begins racing back, but she chooses the wrong corridor and ends up in a room full of sleeping Sims, including one who resembles Maya. She instantly takes her out and puts the chip, but it does not work. A few missiles do manage to land at that time and damage certain robot villages. Joshua's suit is running low on oxygen, but Alfie appears and transports him to a room with fresh air while she prepares the escape pod. Andrews, enraged, unleashes his final weapon, a massive octopus-like robot that catches Alfie. Joshua swiftly shuts off the escape pod, and the door slices off the tentacles of the robot, rescuing Alfie. The robot snatches Joshua as Andrews prepares another enormous strike, but Alfie uses her skills to make it drop Joshua before falling. The door to the pod was shattered during the raid, so the bomb detonates while the duo battles with it. The strikes are cancelled as the Nomad begins to explode, and the missiles fall without exploding. Before releasing the pod, Joshua promises Alfie that he'll see her in paradise because he doesn't have much time left. Then Joshua leaves the room to await the end, only to discover that the Maya Sim is still operational. Before the explosion kills them both, the lovers sprint toward each other and kiss. Alfie's pod safely lands on Earth, and she joins the celebration of the simulant's liberation.